guys? My name is Candace. I am from upstate South Carolina. I have a Helene story and I wanted to share it with you guys. My family was affected in some very interesting ways, and I feel like there's some great lessons to be learned. I know I learned a lot from the situation, and I'm hoping if I share it, it'll bring some awareness. I know that day that was super hard on my family, very emotional day, and we're still dealing with the effects of it. So I went to bed on Thursday night, like any other night. I did check, make sure I had some batteries, a flashlight to get to. Made sure my grandmother was good. She lives with me. And then went to bed. We live on a 60-acre farm, and so we have plenty of food, bottled water, all that kind of good stuff. Just in general, we're good to go when it comes to that. But I wasn't really too concerned otherwise. I got a call at 1:30 in the morning from my brother, and I was very confused, very out of it, and he wanted to know if my dad had called, and I said no. Like, I talked to him at like 5 o'clock. At that time, I didn't realize it was 1 in the morning. I was thinking it was still, maybe it was 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But I looked at the clock, realized what time it was, and then my brother said, Mom's on her way to the ER, and you probably want to hop in your car and head this way. And when I got to the hospital, I learned that Mom had a seizure in her sleep. There was bleeding on the brain, and they were doing some research kind of to find out why and what happened and all that good stuff. So at that point, we're not really sure. We're just sitting with her, taking turns in the ER, and trying to keep her calm. She was in a lot of pain. I've never heard her in that kind of pain before. It was hard to watch. So a couple hours in, we get some communication from the ER doctor, and they let us know that she's had a aneurysm in her brainstem, and that they wanted to transfer her to Greenville Memorial. The ER that we went to was maybe about 30 minutes away, closer to where we live out in the country. And they wanted to do this before the storm hit. At this point, I want to say it was maybe 4:30, and they said that we needed to get it done before the storm hit, and they wanted to get us out of the ER and home safe before the storm hit. So we had her transferred to Greenville Memorial. My dad went with her, and my brother and I started driving home. At that point, I didn't realize it, but we were probably already in the outer band. It was maybe between 5 and 5:30 in the morning, and we had to move some logs out of the road. Things were already kind of flying in front of us. It was a bit of a precarious drive. We did make it home fine. Got tucked in bed, and I slept really good. I'm surprised I didn't wake up to any of the trees falling or anything, any of the extracurriculars going on outside, but I didn't. I stayed asleep. And maybe I woke up about 8:30 in the morning, and I decided to walk the perimeter of the house and then walk down and check on my brother and sister. They live right next door. We kind of live again on a 60-acre farm, family compound situation. And so I walked down, checked on my brother and his wife. They didn't have any power, just like us. And I didn't realize it when I first walked past the house, but I realized that on the way back up, there's actually a tree on my house. And we noticed this, I kind of noticed this in a phase, in like a fog. I was still probably half asleep, And I remember that morning walking around seeing things that weren't supposed to be there, like shingles off the roof or a tree on the house, and just kind of being in a daze and thinking, oh, that's not supposed to be there. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. Didn't occur to me that there were massive things wrong, massive trees down. I had no idea what had happened to the property until later on, but we'll get to that. So I realized at that point that the tree is on the side of the house where my grandmother lives, and at that point I realized we need to move her. And so I get ready to move her, and I talk to my dad in the process, and we realize that my mom's had an aneurysm. She's going to be in ICU for a while. So I decided to get my dad a overnight bag put together, and so I go over to his house. And in the process of moving my grandmother over there so she wouldn't be in a precarious situation with the tree, she fell and broke her hip. And so I'm thinking, all right, my mom just had an aneurysm. My grandma just fell and broke her hip. There's a tree on the house. I need some help. So I go get my brother, and we kind of assess what we need to do, get an overnight bag for my dad, and kind of assess first aid for my grandmother. And my sister-in-law is a nurse, and she could tell pretty right away that something was really wrong. It looked like my grandmother had hit her head, and also possibly broken something in her leg. And so we decide that we need to take her to the ER we need to take my grandmother to the ER as well. So we get an overnight bag for my dad, and we get my grandmother loaded up in the car, and we see a couple neighbors running through our front pasture. We're like, oh, what's going on there? And they were kind of running through and checking all the houses. Unbeknownst to us, there was a lot of damage on our road, and they had actually walked down to check on everyone and make sure everyone was safe and didn't need help. They had already scouted out the front road and realized it was basically impassable. And we let them know that we had a medical emergency and that we had to get out. And we proceeded to head up our drive. We realized as soon as we got to the top of our drive, that section of our driveway was impassable. Fallen trees, power lines. It looked like a little mini forest. You could not see a clear path through to get to the other side. It was kind of wild. I've never seen anything like it. So we have to go through one of our side pastures to get up to our road off of our drive. And so we do that. And you've got to have 4-wheel drive to be able to get through some of those pastures. So luckily we had a vehicle that would, that we were already in a vehicle that would do that, which was good. And so the neighbors hop in the car with us, and we all drive up to see the road to see what we could do. And we probably hiked 3/4 of it and realized there's no way we're going to get a 92-year-old through it with a potentially broken leg, broken hip, and a head injury. So we decided to call 911. And in the course of doing that, we realized that EMS was grounded. So, we called 911. And basically the 911 operator said, EMS is grounded. There's no way that we can get to you right now. And there's a really long wait time on fire to clear the road. And, basically were like, are we on our own? She was like, for now, yeah. Was basically how the conversation went. I'll never forget looking up at my brother and him handing me the phone and him looking at me and saying, all right, we're on our own. We got to come up with a plan. And so my sister-in-law gets on the phone and starts texting her home group, because all those families live really close to us. And we start connecting with the neighbors and getting all the neighbors together. And we start getting chainsaws and just start cutting our way through it. It was probably a half mile, I would say, of down trees. I'll try to insert some pictures through so that you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about and get some perspective on what it was like. But I will tell you this, I have never in my adult life felt more hopeless in that moment, because my grandmother had fallen with me. You know, I'm the one that's supposed to be taking care of her, and I'm trying to evacuate her out of her house, and in that process she breaks her hip. And then B, we get to this impassable road and are told help's not coming. No one's coming. And yeah, I don't know. That was one of the most hopeless feelings I've ever had in my adult life, I suppose. But next thing I know, and guys, I probably don't have this timeline completely right from this point, because adrenaline is pumping, and I don't know, it could have been 30 minutes, it could have been 40 minutes, it could have been an hour. I'll tell you, it felt like 10 days. But all my brother's friends started showing up with chainsaws, started running through the woods with their chainsaws, cutting through the trees. And all of us, all the neighbors, myself, all of us that didn't have any chainsaws, we started hand rolling logs out of the way and pulling limbs out of the way. And it was probably 14 or 15 people just working in perfect harmony to make the road passable. And next thing I know, I see a couple firemen driving up in ATVs. I think they're from the volunteer fire station just up the road. And they drove through as far as they could, and then they started running through the woods to get to my grandma. And again, I have some pictures of that as well. I'll put in the video. But I'm so grateful for those firemen. I'm so grateful for our neighbors who just jumped in, and they weren't checking on their houses. They weren't checking on their property. They were going house to house and checking on their neighbors. And we'd only met once or twice. And that meant the world to me. And I'm so grateful that we have people around us to our right and our left. And I hope I get the opportunity to return the favor or the deed, for sure. But long story short, we get through the road. We get to the end of it. And I also didn't know this. I found this out 2 days later, but the roads were also impassable at that point. And neighbors that we haven't even met that lived about a half a mile away had been up pretty much right after the storm ended, and they were cutting through on that main road. So there were a lot of miracles that happened in that moment, a lot of people coming together and just taking care of each other. Again, I'm so grateful that people were there to help, and they did help. And we were able to get my grandma out. So back to the main timeline of the story. By the time we got to the main road, they were able to free up a ambulance, so they met us down on the highway. And we got my grandmother in the ambulance, and then my brother and his wife dropped me off at the ER. And when I get to the ER, I get a call from my dad, and my dad basically says they're taking your mom in to repair the aneurysm. And so I was feeling really upset, really nervous. I hadn't eaten in like 12 hours. My adrenaline was pumping from what we'd just been through. I didn't know what was going on with my grandmother. And my mom is in brain surgery. It was a lot, and I was definitely in my feels. And when the doctor came through to kind of give me an update on what was going on with my grandmother, he basically said she broke her hip, like, and kind of her femur and where the ball and the joint meet, and it was going to require some surgery. And I just kind of lost it. I really lost it. And some of the nurses pulled me aside, and they just loved on me in a way that I needed it in that moment. And they brought me food, and they hugged me, and they talked to me about what the brain surgery would be like, and what my grandmother's surgery would be like. And I needed hope in that moment, and they gave it to me. And the thing that was hard is, for me in that moment, I think, is my brother and his wife were together, and they were heading to be with my dad, and my dad was with my mom, and I was with my grandmother, and it was hard for me to kind of hold it together for her while that was going on. And the staff there, they showed me a lot of love. Shout out to the emergency room at Simpsonville, Bon Secours staff. You guys loved on me in a way that I really needed it in the moment, and I'm so grateful. So thank you. What you guys went through that week was really wild, and I got to see it firsthand, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So, all right. They tell me the diagnosis for my grandmother while my mother is in brain surgery. They got me a snack, and they decide that, all right, we got to transfer your grandmother to a hospital that will do orthopedic because she's going to need surgery. So we got transferred to a different hospital that is a little closer to the hospital that my mom is in, but it's still not in the city center where my mom was. And man, I spent the next, 4 nights, I feel like, in that hospital, just sleeping next to my grandmother, and getting updates from my dad. And it was every single person on the nursing staff there were dealing with the same kind of issues I was dealing with at home. So a tree had fallen on their car or their house. Somebody had fallen in the storm and had hit their head. This staff had so much on their plate, and I think probably it was like that at every hospital. And they just didn't miss a beat. They were doing things as a young staff that they hadn't done before, like handwriting records. They were 100% at capacity, and they were still managing to keep smiles on their faces. Um, you know, they fed us. Man, me and my brother, the first day or two, uh, was trying to remember to eat and shower and do normal things when it's that hectic the first 24, 48 hours. I've never been through a natural disaster like that, and then compound that with my grandma and then my mom. um it was a whole different level of adrenaline, and just all the little small things were hard to do. That's the only way I can describe it. And the staff at this hospital was just amazing. I mean, they were going through it personally, and they were dealing with things that they hadn't had to do before, handwriting records. I'm just so grateful, because they also loved on us in a way that I didn't expect. And they were so good to my grandmother. And, so East Side, thank you to all of you for what you guys did for my family. I know that was a hard week for y'all, and I got to see it personally, like day in and day out, morning to night. And you guys showed up, showed out, and did your job, and it means a lot to me. Um, you know, it's phenomenal staff there. So at this point, I'm starting to rotate with my brother, and I'm able to go and sleep somewhere. Chris and Keith Darnell opened up their in-law suite for me, and I was able to get hot meal, hot shower, um, and comfy place to crash. And Chris and I spent a lot of nights uh, talking about conspiracy theories. She's great. She was great at occupying my brain and taking my mind off of everything going on in my life. And a lot of people chipped in that week. Um, a lot of people provided generators, battery packs, stuff for us to borrow and use when ours wasn't working. And I'll say this about, you know, we're pretty prepared in general. We have generators, battery packs, etc. If you're not checking on those things on a regular basis, I would suggest it, because that was something that we hadn't really integrated into our daily life and daily routine. And it when you have that much going on, the little things are hard. And so just remembering to charge a battery pack or start that generator up and make sure it's firing up okay. All these little things, when crisis happens, you're not gonna be able to do it well. And so it's better if you do it on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, or whatever that looks like in your daily life. That's a big lesson that I learned from this whole situation. But I have a few things I want to add. Um, Lessons I've learned, things I want to share. I think, first of all, and I please don't interpret this as a political statement, but I feel like it needs to be said. Um, your government is not coming to save you, okay? And I say this with the utmost respect of my first responder friends, of my 911 operator friends, everybody I know in crisis management, hospitals, nurses. You guys have a hard job. There's nothing more hopeless than calling 911 and being told no one's coming. But can you imagine what that 911 operator was feeling? And who knows how many calls deep she was. And how many people she had to tell that to. And that was just in upstate South Carolina, where we weren't having mudslides and people weren't falling off the sides of mountains. We were pretty lucky here. My situation was just exacerbated by bad luck. I think build your community and support your community, and be aware that if you do vote and you are involved in the political scene, you should be just as much involved in local leadership as you are every 4 years at the presidential level, because the decisions that affect you when it comes to a crisis, that's all local leadership. I 100% think we could take this whole thing and learn something from it and be better. And just on a very micro level, with our family, we're definitely going to be doing that. We're going to be looking at things on a more regular basis, making sure we have things charged, and probably get some more chainsaws, if I'm being honest. The president, whoever it is, doesn't matter who it is, they're not going to save you, and they're not your God. So don't look to them for salvation. Obviously you want to get the person in there that you feel like is going to allow you to live your life the way that you want to live it, just like every other fellow American out there. But at the end of the day, the things that make the difference are on the micro level: who you build relationships with, how well you set yourself up to deal with a crisis, things like that. And I think the last thing that I want to talk about is where God lands in all of this for me. And I will tell you this: I have never had the opportunity to experience the hands and feet of Jesus so brilliantly, so loudly, than I have in the last couple weeks. And every moment that felt hopeless, all I had to do was just pray and ask for his help. And the very next corner, there was somebody helping. There was somebody there that wasn't there before. Or there was, the big monster in my head was removed from the situation, whatever that was. Whether it was 30 trees on a road, or a tree on my house, or driving through a hurricane. So, I think I want to challenge you to put your faith in the right place. It's not a political leader it's not even yourself, to be honest, because there were so many moments where I wanted to give up that day. I was so tired. I was so afraid for my mom, for my grandmother, and God just showed up. And, you know, it, I remember right after my grandmother fell, my sister-in-law came over to start helping us kind of sort things out. And she and I went to the barn to get my grandmother a walker, and she just looked at the sky and said, and it was almost like not an angry way, but like in a this isn't funny, I'm not playing any more games kind of way. God, I need for you to show up, like right now. And you know, 2 minutes later, neighbors that we'd only met maybe like once were running through the pasture to check on everybody. So I just want to encourage you to don't seek out your hope from the wrong place. And that's all I got to say about that. So thanks for listening, and I'm looking forward to adding in some pictures and videos so you guys can see what the last couple weeks have been like. Peace and love.